city was slowly waking up. The faint sounds of cars began to grow louder, and the first lights of morning started to creep into the narrow streets. The air was a bit cold, carrying with it the aroma of coffee wafting from nearby cafes. In a quiet corner of this early morning activity, a solitary man sat on a faded iron bench. He carried nothing, and he wasn't looking at any specific place. His eyes were fixed on an invisible point in the horizon. One cloudy day, while Alan was drinking his morning coffee in the park near his workplace, he noticed a woman sitting on a distant bench. She looked sad and exhausted. At first, he didn't pay much attention to her, but something compelled him to observe her. She was staring at the ground, her shoulders slumped. After a few moments, he saw a tear roll down her cheek. Alan hesitated for a moment, then decided to approach her. He asked gently, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" The woman lifted her head and looked at him with tearful eyes. She said in a hoarse voice, "I don't think so. I've lost everything." Alan sat beside her and asked softly, "What happened?" The woman began to narrate her story slowly. She used to work in a small restaurant, but she lost her job when the restaurant closed down. She didn't have enough savings, and she was evicted from her home because she couldn't pay the rent. Now she had nowhere to go and no idea how to face the future. Alan listened to her attentively, never interrupting. When she finished, he simply said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you." After this encounter, Alan couldn't forget the woman. Her sad face and broken voice echoed in his mind throughout the day. He began to reflect on the things he had always taken for granted. A roof over his head, a steady job, food on the table. That night, while eating his simple dinner, he found himself thinking about her life. How would you feel if you were in her place? He asked himself. How could you endure life without shelter or hope? These new thoughts felt strange to him. He had grown accustomed to being alone and focusing only on his own affairs. The next day, Alan went to the same park, hoping to find her there. But she wasn't there. He began to feel worried about her. He wondered where she had gone and whether she was okay. This newfound sense of concern and care for another person felt unfamiliar to him. On his way back home, Alan passed by a group of homeless people sitting under a bridge. They were sharing food and talking in low voices. He felt a pang of pain in his heart. How many people live like this, he thought. And why hadn't he noticed them before? One evening, as Alan was returning home from work, he saw a group of volunteers distributing food to the homeless at a street corner. He stopped and watched the scene. He saw tired faces and desperate eyes. Suddenly, he spotted a familiar face. It was the woman he had met in the park, standing in line to receive food. Alan approached her and said quietly, "Hi, I'm Alan, the man you spoke with in the park." The woman looked at him in surprise and said, "Oh yes, I remember you." Alan asked her, "Are you okay now? Do you have a place to stay?" The woman shook her head sadly and replied, "No, I'm still homeless." Alan felt something stir inside him. He couldn't turn his back on this woman and leave her to face her fate alone. "What will you do?" he asked himself. "You can go back to your normal life and think of this as just a fleeting incident. But is that really what you want to do?" Alan decided to take action. He said to the woman, "Listen, I live alone in a small apartment. I don't have much, but you can stay with me temporarily until you find a solution." The woman looked at him in astonishment and disbelief. She asked, "Are you serious? Why are you doing this for me? You don't even know me." Alan replied simply, "Because I saw your sadness, and I don't think anyone should be alone in this world." Alan hosted the woman in his apartment. He provided her with food, clothing, and shelter. He listened to her stories and offered her emotional support. Over time, the woman began to regain her strength and hope. She started looking for a job, And with Alan's help, she eventually found a small job and rented a room of her own. On the day of her departure, the woman looked at Alan with grateful eyes and said, "I'll never forget what you did for me. You saved my life." Alan smiled and replied, "Don't say that. You taught me something important too." The woman asked, "What is it?" Alan answered, "You showed me that life becomes more meaningful when we care for others." The woman smiled softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She nodded and said, "Thank you, Alan, for everything." Alan watched as she walked away, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. He closed the door softly, feeling a newfound sense of purpose in his life. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The city outside continued its hustle and bustle, but inside Alan's heart, something had changed forever. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe for more.